So we are back with Renaissance man Xavier Waterkeyn, all the way from Australia, back to tap into his wisdom. How are you?
Yes, it's all happening here and here
Oh.
and here.
So how's it going there in Australia? How's your world right now?
Well, it really doesn't matter what's going on in Australia because I live in my own universe. But since you ask, Australia is going through a period of social fragmentation because of this whole virus thing. And one of our states is almost in total lockdown because it keeps having cases and deaths. I was there not so long ago and the feeling was quite depressed. It wasn't until I came back from Melbourne to Sydney that I realised how muddy the waters were down there and how much clearer they are up here. Not that the rest of Australia has any reason to be smug about anything, but certainly there was this feeling down there in Melbourne that life was very oppressive. And unfortunately, when people create enough of that vibe, it creates a vortex or a pendulum or whatever you want to call it. And you then have to work out a way of navigating yourself around that, usually by ignoring it and just getting on and minding your own business and doing whatever it is you do within the restrictions that might be imposed by a temporarily more powerful reality than the one that you're experiencing or that you want to experience.
Right. Yeah. Because one of the things I thought we do today is I have some things from the Vadim Zeland's book, the 78 Days of Transurfing, and just points in there. And that reminded me of one of the points in there, which is that if we have fear and doubt, or any kind of emotion like that, that miracles can't happen, right? Like miracles and the impossible happen when we're feeling, we're not feeling that kind of fear. You know?
I disagree.
Oh.
I think that miracles can happen even in atmospheres of fear and doubt. They just happen to be fearful and doubtful miracles.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So you can even get extraordinary things that happen if there is enough emotional investment in an individual to experience a particular reality. You can have extraordinary, miraculous runs of bad luck if you keep putting that sort of energy out there. We don't normally call them miracles, but a miracle is just another name for something that's extraordinary, something that is outside of our normal experience. So whether that's a positive thing or a negative thing depends on your point of view. Right. So it's quite possible to have miraculous things happen in states of incredible negativity and awfulness. You just end up getting life experiences that are incredibly horrible and doubtful and hideous.
Yeah, because the thing that I love, I wrote down some of these things that because it's this thing of that I really resonate with, and I really love, and just works for me, is this thing that he called the habit of feeling wonderful, and life is a celebration, right? And then some of the things were, and as soon as I read this, I was like, yes, this is the deal. Put on your rose-colored glasses and ignore anyone who tells you to remove them. You're the king and queen of your personal world. Your world takes care of you because it loves you. You are the magical song. Your soul came into the world as if to a celebration.
That's beautiful, and it's very poetic. Yeah. But I find that this whole attitude of positivity has to be practiced and cultivated.
Yes.
You start off, though, or at least I start off with the fundamental ground state that the mere fact that you exist is miraculous.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
If you can just stay in that place for a little while every day and say, you know what, no matter how horrible life can be sometimes or how wonderful it can be at times, The mere fact that you exist at all is a miracle. The mere fact that there is something rather than nothing is the first and greatest miracle.
Yes, absolutely.
That's a great starting off point.
Absolutely.
Start from
And
that point, then you can build on that.
yes, and anybody who is in any situation is you can recognize that in any situation that you're in, right? Like, you know, it's a miracle that you exist. That's
That you exist at all, and that you are and that there is you that is experiencing something.
yeah.
That is miraculous.
Yes.
It makes everything else, it puts everything else into proportion. Even if what you are your current experience of reality is less than wonderful, you can at least go back to that point and say, yeah, it's pretty sucky, but yes, I have to concede that it is miraculous that I exist at all. It is miraculous that I am experiencing something. From that point, you can take the next step, which is to make a choice about how you are going to cultivate the mind, body, heart, spirit state that will engender an experience of reality that is reflective of that mind, heart, spirit, body state.
Yes. So is there like this whole thing about the individual existence and then the collective experience? So does the individual, the experience that, you know, we have, you have inside you, does that create the collective experience? Or
No, not in my framework.
okay.
Are you familiar with something called a Venn diagram?
No.
You must have seen them though. Those are those diagrams that are made up of intersecting circles,
Oh yes, yeah.
right? That's a Venn diagram.
Oh,
So you
okay.
have think of this screen as the alternative space. Think of it as blank right now, right?
Yeah.
Ignore me. Think of it as blank, right? Now, within this alternative space, you have, say, just for this example, here's my reality, existing as a subset of experience within an infinite space, right?
Okay.
I have filtered out through my current state of being, which is made up of my psychology, my emotional state, my spiritual state, my corporeal state. All of these are blended and mixed together. But the totality of that particular focus, because I am also a multi-dimensional being existing at many levels beyond, in front of this current plane of reality, right?
Yeah.
Am I making this clear?
Yeah.
Right? So right now, though, here am I in this room experiencing a reality, right? Here
Yeah.
are you experiencing a reality in another section of the alternative space. You are also a multi-dimensional being existing on many planes, blah, 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 blah. But right now your focus, yes, very good. Do that more often. You're there. Yeah.
Thank you.
So you're there, right? And I'm here, right? And right now there is this tiny intersection, right? We call that tiny intersection a collective reality, but it's nothing of the sort.
Oh.
It is simply the intersection between my reality and your reality. Think of it. Are you familiar with the term solipsism?
I've heard, I can't remember. Yeah.
Solipsism is an extreme philosophical point of view where you are the only person, that you're the only thing that exists, because you're the only consciousness that can experience itself. I have no objective proof that you're anything but a figment of my imagination. That's in its most extreme form. That's in its most extreme form. There is also soft solipsism, which is more or less what I'm arguing here, is that while I am the center of a universe of experience, but I'm only the center of my own universe of experience. You have a reality outside of me, in a sense, because I am not focused in being you right now in a bigger sense. Since we're all one anyway, the infinite individuates itself in consciousness. And that consciousness might be the consciousness of a hydrogen atom, or it could be a consciousness of an individual human being. It could be the consciousness of an entire planet or an entire galaxy. Consciousness is everywhere, but individuates itself through whatever current state of being it's focused in. But here am I, and here are you, and right now, for this amount of time, as we experience time, you and I are experiencing a common reality that is shared at a psychic level, manifesting itself as a physical experience in space and time. But you remain in your universe and I remain in my universe. So when we talk about a collective, we're actually looking at a lot of intersecting circles, or actually in a three-dimensional space spheres, or in a four-dimensional space hyperspheres, but let's not get too technical. The thing is with Vadim Zeland is that he comes from a physics background, and so he's familiar with ideas like multidimensional space and Higgs spaces and alternate timelines, and that's the sort of thing that you deal in, especially when you start dealing with quantum mechanics and all that sort of stuff. That's a little outside the range of most lay people's thinking. So I try not to go too technical in that aspect, but I think you get the point. Intersections of individuated reality experiences intersecting at a particular point, and we call that the common experience. The problem is that people believe that the common experience is actually an objective exterior reality when it's nothing of the sort. And people will get sucked into that and then bring that that illusion of commonality into their focus of experience, and then they're going to want to react to that, and that causes all sorts of problems.
Right.
Is all this making sense?
It is making sense. And like there's this thing about, like he says that we like he said there is no one objective reality, though, right? Like, how did he put it? Like that he says,
yes, exactly, this is what I'm saying.
Yes, exactly. So then and then he says like the world puts the same riddle to all its inhabitants. What do I look like? So the world is asking you, what do I look like? And that allows everybody. So it allows whatever anybody says, they're right. So the world agrees with everybody. So the world says to you, what do I look like? And then you interpret the world. And
we ask ourselves what we look like, and what the answer is what we're experiencing. With, right, I would argue, a little bit of a lag time, because what you're experiencing now of yourself and what I'm experiencing of myself and what you and I are experiencing collectively is something that a seed that we had already planted and we're now reaping.
Yes, right.
But now we're also reaping other seeds that we will experience in layman's terms later.
Mm-hmm.
But the alternative space is a space of infinite multidimensional potentiality, and from that endlessly infinite blank canvas we can paint whatever we like. But of course, while I'm busy being me, I can't be you.
Right.
While you're busy being you, you can't be me, and that's perfectly okay. And that's just the way that, for want of a better word, God wants it.
Right.
We are the infinite experiencing itself as temporary individuations, and it is an endless journey. It doesn't matter where you're going to be, you're always going to be. The only thing that you'll ever have that's continuous is that sense of continuity. You are not the same person you were when you were a 5-year-old little girl running around playing with a ball or something, right? You are a different being now because you are experiencing yourself differently, because your focus, your psychology, your mental state, your emotional state, your physical state has reflected that change, and that spiritual state has changed. You have grown into something else. But in a bigger picture, you are but a leaf on a soul tree, and one day that leaf will wither and die and fall off, but the tree continues, and when that leaf falls off, then there's no longer a focal point for that consciousness. Mm-hmm. That consciousness, that leaf will on the soul tree will have its job to provide the tree with a set of experiences that it adds to itself, experiences that it digests and uses to continue its endless process of growth. At that point, the tree might decide to sprout another leaf, in which case you will experience, for example, another incarnation. However, in a more accurate sense, your current incarnation is not one of a series that are happening in a line. It's more like seeing at a fourth dimensional level, all the leaves are growing on the tree at the same time.
Right.
So while you might think that right now you are this American or Canadian woman living in North America, experiencing a lifetime that started umpteen years ago and will continue on for another umpteen years, simultaneously, if you go into an alternate state of consciousness and dive deep into your reality, into your consciousness, into your higher level soul experience, you might also experience inklings of these other lives that you are living simultaneously, but might be occurring in the past relative to this alternative space state, while at the same time also be experiencing in the future in the alternative space state. At the same time, we're not talking about just one past, but a series of alternate pasts and a series of alternate futures, with the focal point always being the eternal present.
Mm. Do you think that
So
are there worlds or experiences where we are aware of the multiple? Can we be aware of more than one life at the same time, like maybe in high?
What do we keep saying with these reality awakening modalities, which reality awakening modalities, RAMs I call them, whether they're reality transurfing, or whether it's law of attraction, or the Neville Goddard stuff, or whatever you're using, whether it blah 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 blah, new age woo woo, whatever you want to call them, even quantum physics, blah blah blah, whatever you want to call them. I call them reality awakening modalities, because you are awakening to a reality, and the awakening is constant and continuous. It's like a continual revelation. Revelation isn't something that just happened a couple of 100 years ago to some guru, or a couple of 1,000 years ago to somebody who then gets deified, or a couple of 1,000 more years ago in the past because somebody talks to somebody, someone talks to another consciousness, and that consciousness interprets it as a burning bush, or whatever legend you want to put onto it, right? Revelation is continuous. So you're asking me a question whether there are existences. Yes, of course there are existences where you are aware of all these states simultaneously, because that's the ground state of your being anyway.
Yeah.
But it's not what I'm experiencing right now in this state of consciousness. In this state of consciousness, I'm too busy pretending to be me, talking to you, pretending to be you.
Right.
But in alternate states of consciousness, I get an inkling of what it's like for the other versions of Xavier.
Yeah.
And some of these versions of Xavier are not human.
Right.
And some of these versions of Xavier aren't even terrestrial. Some of them don't even exist on the material plane at all.
Yes.
And in fact, Xavier is just a convenient label for this current body, which I think of it more as a meat suit.
Yes.
That's designed for interacting in this particular environment. But it's pretty useless anywhere else. It wouldn't survive 2 seconds on Mars, and it wouldn't survive more than a fraction of a second on Venus. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So consciousness grows the leaves or the meat suits or what plant suits or whatever it is that it needs to experience that thing at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, Dolores Cannon talked about that, didn't she?
Mm-hmm.
Quite a bit.
Right.
She talked about going into people's past lives, and people that they weren't really past lives, they were present lives being experienced in a fourth dimensional present.
Yeah.
But as far as that, exactly. But at that particular moment, that particular subject under hypnosis was focused in that self, and then experiencing itself in other incarnations.
Right.
And those incarnations add to the experience of what I call the soul tree.
Yeah.
And so but you can't have it both ways. If you're going to commit yourself to being Dee, or if you're going to commit yourself to being Xavier, or you're going to be committing yourself to being anybody else,
Yeah.
then that's your commitment and that's your focus in that particular moment and that
Right.
particular time.
Right.
On the understanding that there's nothing eternal about this particular meat suit.
Right. Yeah. That's such a good point, to be where we are, and like where we are is here as humans on earth, right? And so, and because I mean, I get glimpses of things when I'm either meditating or going into sleep or something. Then I have these experiences of being someone else somewhere else, but that's when I'm not like, I'm either going to sleep or I'm meditating, so I'm not really like here living my life. But
Well, there's nothing wrong with that.
no, but then there's a
I
whole,
mean, if you want to do that, because you're still always going to be
spontaneously, right?
having that experience. You see what I
Yeah.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
So you having the experience of being somebody else is not the same as being that somebody else. You're only that somebody else when you're totally focused in and committed to that particular thing. But
Right.
that isn't what's happening right now. But
Yes.
you experiencing another self is itself another experience again that adds yet another layer to the experience of you.
Right.
So there's no way you can get away from being you.
Yeah.
So you shouldn't be flagellating yourself saying, oh, I mean, I'm supposed to be here and I'm supposed to be
Yeah.
me and I'm supposed to be experiencing this incarnation of myself in this present moment. I'm supposed to be present. I'm supposed to be gazing in my navel, or I'm supposed to be really, really just there for myself because this is who I am right now. Stuff that. Who cares?
Yeah, because like that happens spontaneously, right? Like I don't plan it, but it's not like I'm planning, like to go like, oh, where am I? It's just like it would be something that would just appear, but
okay, but there's nothing stopping you from choosing to make it a more conscious experience.
oh, okay.
You simply make it an intent.
Oh,
Right now, this version of me wants to experience myself as something else, while on the understanding that I still retain myself.
oh,
And that's again a different experience from actually being totally immersed. And that other self at times will also experience you.
right,
It works both ways because that other self is also you,
right,
but a different version of you in a different timeline and a different subjective experience of its own universe, but it's all one anyway.
yeah,
Do whatever you need to do or whatever you want to do to experience whatever you want to experience. There's no should or ought to here. There is,
right,
after all of eternity to play with this. However, having said that, in my experience, the higher self tends to have an agenda. And that agenda will, to some extent, circumscribe or limit the possibilities available to you. But
right.
that's just my experience. I don't know whether that's everybody else's experience.
Yeah. You mentioned the G word earlier, God, and now you higher self. So can you tell us what what is your idea what God is and the higher self? Are they
on the understanding that it can only be an idea expressed in terms that the majority of the people watching this will understand? I don't claim to have a greater connection to divinity than anybody else does. I am
right?
not speaking for infinity. I
Right.
think the chances of me understanding infinity or God's self, or whatever you want to call it, in my current state of focus being me is about as great as the chance of a hydrogen atom understanding this version of reality. All right? The gap between my lowly little self and the infinite is so vast that it's difficult for me to say anything about the G word without sounding like an idiot. However, at the risk of sounding like an idiot, my understanding is simply a pantheistic understanding that everything is God experience self in infinite numbers of ways in eternity. There is only this one thing, endlessly growing, endlessly expanding, endlessly unfinished. Because as we've said in the past, I think, it cannot be unfinished, because if it were finished, it would have an end. If it had an end, it wouldn't be infinite. Therefore, it must be in an infinite state of infinite growth eternally. Having said that, you can say anything, and because you can say anything, any description of reality will find a reality that follows that description. And most people find that really scary, because they want there to be a singular story. They want there to be some ultimate answer, but there really isn't an ultimate answer, because there's only one ultimate question. And the question is always, what if? It is the only question that God ever asks.
And the higher self is?
Well, the higher self is simply, again, if all moments are simultaneous, then the higher versions of you already exist and are already experiencing their thing. And think of yourself as an extension of that higher self. Think of yourself as the very, very tip of a finger. The
future self?
higher self being a future and past self. A higher self exists outside of our understanding of time and space.
Right.
So it can be a future self, it can be a past self, it doesn't really matter. But we call it higher simply because it's a, relatively speaking, it's a more expanded state of our own consciousness. In the same sense that a nerve cell firing in our bodies is an expression of ourselves, but the experience of a nerve cell firing is quite different from the experience of a brain that is got trillions of nerve cells firing simultaneously in very complicated networks whose number and neural paths whose number exceeds the number of atoms in the known universe. So yes, but right. So you've got to work out how much of that higher self you want to experience, and if you want to call it God, call it God.
Yeah.
All right. I don't have a particular. Well, I personally don't have a particular investment in what people call it.
Yeah.
I tend to think of my immediate higher self as Big Xy.
As which?
Big Xy. So sometimes the little Xy will talk to Big Xy and say, well, what now? And I might or might not experience an impulse to do something, because my experience is that Big Xy has an agenda, and that I am simply an instrument through which Big Xy explores and fulfills that agenda. And that's okay, because does my finger question when I give it an order to pick up a cup of tea? No, because the finger knows that we're all one and will do what I ask it to do, because that's its thing. So I'm an extension of my higher self. Therefore, if my higher self asks, then I just do it, because I'm assuming my higher self is bigger than me, smarter than me, more experienced than me, more intelligent than me, more everything than me, and that it knows what it's doing. Or even if it doesn't, it still is going to have a better batting average than little Xy. And that's what I call the fourth frame, because in Reality Transurfing, they talk about the frame of the relationship with the outer world, the frame of the relationship with the inner world, the center frame where you are detached from both and just simply observing. But then there is what I call the fourth frame, which is the connection between the self and the higher self, and allowing yourself to become an instrument of that. And that takes practice too.
Yeah.
In the same way that it takes practice for a toddler to learn how to walk. It's not that the legs don't want to obey the directives of the toddler brain. It's just that the legs are wobbly and the nerve system isn't fully functioning yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so toddles along. So I am a toddler relative to the a more adult version of myself, which I call Big XC, but there's Big XC has a bigger XC operating behind it. And there's an infinite series of XCs, all ultimately leading to the Godhead.
Yeah.
Which is so remote from my general consciousness that I will not make any claim to understand that, except in the broadest possible terms, an infinite process of infinite growth in infinity eternally.
Right. So that toddler analogy is a good one, because the toddler has to build the muscles too. And it's kind of like we build these muscles by, if we have a intention, right? Because there's that whole thing about going to higher frames. So like, the example of what happened with, Renee, that, she's spoken quite freely about, where, she was in a really bad place in her life, and her skin, she had a horrible skin condition, and she hated herself.
Well, it wasn't just a skin condition. It was it is an oversensitivity to her own histamines.
Yeah.
Which basically, now histamines are the things that make your body swell up when you get a cut or an infection. It's meant to be an immune response that in her body was manifest everywhere. And so it was like having a really, really bad allergic reaction to her own self, which I think is really interesting. She was allergic to herself.
Yeah.
Now, you're going to share this video with Renee, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah. And actually she asked for the link, so she'll put it on the group. But
okay, fine. Okay. So that's an example of, but I think I haven't talked to her yet, because we keep saying, we're going to do
that's going to happen too, I think.
Yeah.
Hi, Renee.
It'll happen. Yeah, exactly. So you've scooped her.
Yes, she was.
So anyway, sorry,
I was just going to say that she, when she studied reality transurfing, and she understood about going to the higher tracks, right? So she actually trained herself to move to these higher tracks of being, and to like embody higher versions of herself, right? And
again, this of higher versions of yourself is purely a subjective, convenient terminology. It's as I again, at the risk of sounding like an idiot and speaking for God, I don't think that God particularly cares what you manifest, as long as you're manifesting something, and you can't help but manifest something anyway. So,
but like health versus sickness, right? Like, I mean,
well, yeah, but that's a human subjective idea of what's better. I mean, I agree with that. It is better to be healthy than to be unhealthy.
Yeah.
But the fact that ill health exists means that ill health states are realities that can be experienced in the alternate space, and have, I'd imagine, from a higher point of view, their own aesthetic satisfactions, in the same way that some people like horror movies.
Right. But I think what I'm trying to say is that we have the ability to choose, like, because, we're just not here living like, ants or something. Like, we're human, so we have the ability to sort of like shape our lives, right? I mean,
I couldn't agree more. We have the ability to shape our lives, but the point is that we're shaping our lives anyway.
Right.
No matter what we do, the question is always, the question is always, are we shaping our lives consciously?
Yeah.
And are we doing it from the space of an enlightened consciousness? And this is where the toddling comes in, because a toddler is, by definition, in a state of less developed awareness, in a state of less developed consciousness.
Yeah.
Our journey is one of growing into greater and greater consciousness all the time. And as a result, our journey is a result of creating a greater capacity to experience realities consciously, to choose them consciously rather than have them imposed upon us. There is a difference between being a feather and being a bird.
Well, that's a good one. Like that.
A feather is carried on winds and it has no volition. It will experience things as a feather. It will fly to places. It might be carried up on very high currents. It might experience all sorts of amazing things, but it has very limited volition. Whereas the bird can choose where it flies and when and how and what impulses it follows. And a flock also has an even greater sense of volition and
Ah,
power. And so these things are all different ways of experiencing reality. Right now, the people watching these sorts of videos are people who are at least awakened enough to think, to at least consider the possibility that they have more volition than they have previously allowed themselves to believe that they have. And so all of this is all of this stuff, all of these conversations, all of these techniques that people learn, all of these books that people read are all in the service of increasing your repertoire of tools at your disposal to experience different things. It is in effect growing wings or growing flippers or growing gills or growing whatever it is that you need to grow in order to experience different realities in different environments. The vast majority of which have nothing to do with the human experience at all. But right now here we're human, and so we'll do the human stuff until we've done every possible thing that a human being can do at its current level of evolution. And then when that's finished, we go on to do something else in different bodies, in different environments, on different planets, in different worlds, in different universes. It's all part of the growth agenda of the higher self.
so with this lockdown that's happening right now, like everybody's experiencing it differently, right? Like everybody has a different experience of it.
Yeah. People are saying that we're all in the same boat. We're not in the same boat at all.
No.
We're all possibly in the same storm, but we're all on different boats. Some
Right.
of us on a luxury cruise line, in executives in beautiful suites, complaining about the fact, oh, I'm so restricted, but I have my own bathroom and I have room service, and the boat is swaying, but it's only swaying a little bit because the boat is so big it takes a really big ocean. And some of us are on little dinghies fighting for our lives in hospitals with tubes down our throats, while we're trying to keep the integrity of our meat suits that are under attack from other entities, because that's where our consciousness happens to be for whatever reason. And there are other people who aren't experiencing anything at all. For me, personally, this whole thing has been great. My life has improved quite dramatically since the whole COVID thing started.
Tell me how.
Well, for a start, I think people are finally getting the fact that there are different types of people in the world and there are different ways of interacting with the world. And some of us prefer to limit our interactions with other people. And unfortunately, if you live in a society where of, say, social butterflies, and you don't happen to be one of them, it's actually quite stressful to do too much socializing. It's actually quite draining for a more introverted mindset to interact constantly with other people. That's actually painful. But extroverts don't understand that because they live in an extroverted world. Now, there's been an imposition of an introverted world, and all of the introverts out there are suddenly saying, oh, thank God, I have a legitimate excuse not to interact with people, because even if I like people, it's draining, right? So sudden, and now all of a sudden, extroverts finally have to understand and awaken to and grow their consciousness into understanding that the stress that they're experiencing in isolation for this temporary period of time of isolation is that whatever stress they're experiencing, that's the stress that introverts experience all the time in an extroverted world, but for different reasons. Yeah.
So hey, they'll get you on Zoom. We'll get you on Zoom. You can't escape us.
Put that in your opium pipe and smoke it, extroverts. So there's that. Then there's for example, because I'm a writer, and I spend most of my time a lot of my time in front of a screen, in my imagination, and working in my imagination and choosing collections of words to string together to make meaningful experiences that other people can then use to create their own experiences. That's my job. That isn't really affected by what goes on in
Yeah.
the world, and people have started headhunting me because they suddenly realize, well, in a world with restricted interactions, there's suddenly a huge value in people like me who are able to create virtual experiences that do not require as much interpersonal. And that's something that I'm thinking, well, duh, it's always been a value, but only now you're recognizing it, because only now are the social conditions in such a place that you're forced to recognize and appreciate what people like me do. And now all of a sudden I go from being valued to more valued.
Nice.
Now, I'm not trying to be smug about this. I'm just saying, though,
Yeah.
that when environments change, particular organisms are better suited to that changed environment than the people that were suited to the other environment. When that meteor came crashing down 66 million years ago in the Yucatan Peninsula and wiped out the dinosaurs, it was a bad day for the dinosaurs, but a great day for the mammals. All right? And it's because of that the mammalian bodies ultimately evolved into these funny naked chimp bodies that are vehicles for consciousness to express themselves in. But I don't mean to be, and I really don't mean to be smug about this. I mean, a lot of people are suffering, a lot of people are having inconvenience, but some people, for some people, it really is a horrible storm, and I really feel for them. But at the same time, we have to acknowledge that in changed circumstances, there will be people, there will be individuals, there will be consciousnesses that are thinking, hey, this hasn't affected me at all. Or it's actually the circumstances have created an environment in which something like me can better flourish. And that's true of any circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the awakening process is the ability to make lemonade out of any lemons that are thrown at you.
Yes.
Anybody can have an easy life if they're if they served nothing but lemonade. But the real trick is learning to make the lemonade. One of the things that I learned in when I was doing my certificate in commercial cookery was that my chef would say, anybody, unless you're really incompetent, you can make a really good meal out of high quality ingredients. It takes considerable skill to make a really good meal out of low quality ingredients. And it takes even greater skill to be able to take a culinary disaster and turn it into something that is not only edible, but is actually exquisite. You see what I mean?
Analogy.
It takes an extremely advanced, well, by human standards anyway, extremely advanced soul to be able to find beauty whilst sitting neck deep in a tub of manure. Now, I'm not suggesting that,
like people sit in mud baths, so it's probably good for the skin.
exactly, whatever. It takes a but it also takes an extremely advanced soul to say, you know what? I don't need to sit in a tub of manure. I can choose an experience of reality where I'm walking in a garden of roses that smell beautifully while they're standing in soil that's been nurtured by blood and bone.
Yeah. Like, do you think that, like, some people say that everybody's, higher self, has them in the situation, so that, in this lockdown situation or any situation ever, that they're in that situation because their higher self has them in that situation for whatever.
This is why I'm saying this. In my experience, the higher self has an agenda.
Right.
Now, that agenda might be temporarily to put you in what you experience as adversity.
Right.
And this is something that, and this is a subject that's popped up in some people's discussions with me. People have to be aware that, I mean, I just want to make a point here that
Sure.
ever since I started getting involved in this whole transurfing thing, there have been a lot of people who have messaged me requesting that I join groups and all that stuff. So it's not going to happen. I have a very, very full schedule. I don't have time to interact, which is why I agree to do these videos, purely because I can speak to a whole bunch of people at a time
Right.
about the things that pop up. So things that have come up as this idea of transcendence through adversity.
Yes.
And I discussed, I think, with Renee or maybe with you, I don't remember.
Yep.
It's all a
Okay.
bit of a blur, but I have
Yeah.
discussed the fact that I had, for many years, extreme difficulties, challenges dealing with an aged parent. And yet, after all of the things that my mother put me through, partly, but all of which were something that I had accepted into my experience, and all of which I'm quite happy to take responsibility for. So she really didn't put me through that. I put myself through that situation. But in retrospect, I choose to believe that my higher self put me through those situations to demonstrate just how powerful I was, that I could take any situation and turn it to my advantage, that I could weave gold out of straw over and over and over again. And so that in a really squirrely, squirmy, God works in mysterious ways type scenario, coming out of it, I became truly aware in my bones that I could handle quite a bit that life threw at me, and that I could pull rabbits out of hats over and over and over again when I thought there was nothing left. Somehow, somewhere, by some means, I was able to draw myself into experiences where people who were normally uncooperative became cooperative, where people who would normally have put barriers in my place put red carpets down, where people, because I had heard so often when people are dealing with aged parents that, oh, it's so hard to get help, it's blah, 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 blah. But my experience was that whenever I needed something to happen, it happened over and over and over again. And even then, finally, dummy got the message that, hey, you can do this. You
Yeah.
can make this happen.
Yeah.
Whatever this might be, which in my mother's case was ultimately to get her into a really top-class nursing home for next to nothing, because I worked out a system within the generous capacity of the Australian government to support people in her situation. But I worked out the rules. I worked out the game. I worked out what had to be fulfilled. And it was a lot of work, but I managed to do it. And I'm saying that what happened was ultimately, through a series of inspired maneuvers, I moved into a stream of reality in which I was able to lift a burden of myself and off my mother as well. You see what I mean?
Yes.
So
Yes.
if I can do it, theoretically everybody else can, but they're going to have their own struggles, their own adversity. But
Yep.
through that, they may find transcendence
Yes.
in their realization that the power is within them to move themselves into reality, into a reality where they are no longer struggling or experiencing that adversity, because in one sense the lesson was learned.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you always succeed. Sometimes you succumb
Right.
to adversity, but that's okay. In eternity, you can just play the game over again. It's like dying in a video game. Okay, you reboot yourself, you reboot the character, you go through an alternate path until
Yep.
you find
Yep.
the way out of the maze.
Yep. Like in transurfing, there's that term, to see the advantage, and that there's always, if nobody can see the advantage, that one advantage is always there, that you're getting you're getting the experience, right? But it's also like, to what degree do you think is that thing about, like, when you know that good will come of this, right? So like, no matter how difficult the situation we are in, if we know good will come of it, there's a certain kind of power in that, is there not? And
it's a bit like that same mindset that says the mere fact that you exist is miraculous.
yeah,
So if you take that just a tiny step further and say, even if my current circumstances are horrible, I'm assuming that there is a gift in here somewhere. Now I need to move into a reality where I realize what that gift is and integrate it into myself.
yeah,
Because that gift will be the seed from which I plant the next experience of my reality. And I know it's a tough sell.
yeah,
It's a really tough sell when you might be sitting in a hospital bed dying of cancer and saying there's a gift in here somewhere, without sounding like you're giving people platitudes, like some sort of Pollyanna positivism. Oh, everything is everything is what's that song in the Lego movie? Everything is awesome.
oh, yeah.
Right? Everything is awesome.
I didn't see the Lego movie, but the thing is,
Right, well,
they discover it themselves. Like there's so many people that have said my cancer is the best thing that ever happened to me. I mean, so many people have said that, right? Because like
it's the ones that have lived.
yeah, but even ones that are dying, because they realize, they start to realize what's important, you know, and they start to
and unfortunately, if it takes cancer to
for some people.
but for some people to realize what's important, well, then that's what their higher self set up for them. The realization that
Yeah,
that this is what's important. Fortunately, if you're a little bit smarter, or just a little bit more, you've grown a little bit more in your consciousness, you don't have to set up cancer. Exactly. Or you don't have to be a dummy like me who set up an extremely difficult parent under extremely difficult mental, emotional, and health circumstances to awaken to your power.
Yeah.
If you're smarter, you don't need to go there.
Yeah.
But sometimes even the smart enough. I mean, I don't consider myself an idiot, but I know when I'm a dummy. I know that there are some times when I think, oh God, XE, really? I mean, you could have just like thought a little bit further. So again, the whole reality, or any RAM, any reality awakening modality,
like that term,
should have in it, should have in it this idea that that should even be a T-shirt. I don't have to give myself cancer.
Yeah.
To
realize
what's worthy in life, or something like that.
Yeah.
Or in human relationships, when we can often find ourselves going out of our way to please somebody, and it's just like you're endlessly giving, and you're exhausting yourself, and the situation is improving. There should be another T-shirt that says, I do not have to set myself on fire to keep you warm.
Yeah. But
there are any
yeah, like there's that saying, you know, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But like there's also this thing that's an old paradigm, because in the new paradigm, like we don't have to suffer and struggle to grow. Like, you know, people think like, oh, you grow through having, you know, difficult situations. I mean, I have had difficult situations in my childhood, which I, you know, like are pretty, you know, difficult. And many people have, right? And then we find ways to, you know, get beyond it, to forgive, to let go, to move on and all that. But also then now in my life now, it's like I don't have to struggle. Like you don't, like people think that they have to struggle and that it has to be a grind, you know, in order to grow. And like, that's really
the problem with that manner of thinking is that you believe that there's only one path to a particular reality. So if I maintain a belief that there is only one way of achieving this particular reality, then that immediately is going to exclude it'll exclude any other perceptions that any other answers that the universe might want to be showing up to you and saying, well, you know, here are alternatives. There's alternative paths. There are more than one ways to skin this cat. I would imagine that in an infinite universe, there are certain things that are only achievable after great struggle, great pain, great
Mhm.
adversity.
In the past on Earth.
No, well, I mean, perhaps, but I think even in any possible present or any possible future, there are going to be just some things that are not achievable unless you go through that. Whether or not you want to achieve these things is up to you. Oh, shush, doggy. Whether or not you want to achieve these things is up to you. In an infinite universe of infinite
Right,
possibility, there are infinite goals that you can for
right.
yourself, and an infinite number of paths that don't evolve any struggle or adversity. But the fact that any of us have ever experienced struggle and adversity
Yeah.
makes the memory of that available to us,
Yes.
and we can say to ourselves, well, there's probably a better way of getting this, or
Yeah.
better way of doing this, or better way of achieving this
Mhm.
that doesn't involve all that thing. And that's another thing that a ram should do, and should awaken people to the idea that uh, that you can achieve things in a variety of different ways. Things
Right.
can be given to you without any strings attached. Things can be exchanged for something else. Not
Well,
every
like you said, you don't have to have cancer. You don't have to get cancer to learn the lesson, like you had said earlier, right? Like you can if that's what your higher self maybe wants you to.
yes, not everything requires a blood sacrifice.
Right. Yeah.
And you're doing yourself a disservice if you believe that the only way that you're going to achieve a particular thing is through a blood sacrifice. In
Mhm.
fact, I would argue that the vast majority of cases where people go to extreme lengths to get something is a failure of the imagination. They have failed to embrace the possibility of other ways of achieving a particular goal or experience a particular reality. They have failed in some fundamental imaginative sense to imagine their way into a particular experience.
Right.
So that's why I always say to people, if you do nothing else, the one thing that you can do every day of your life that will improve things is to practice imagining stuff, and practice imagining good stuff.
Yeah.
Whatever
And
good means to you.
appreciating, or just appreciating all the good stuff, right? Like you were saying earlier, like appreciating your own existence, right? Like that's always something to, that's always something just, I don't know, like it lights up your cells when you just appreciate the fact that you
Well,
exist.
it might light up yours, but I'm so used to the idea that my cells don't light up when I think about that.
Well, they
But
don't. Okay.
no, I just take it
Okay.
for granted.
Yeah.
It's part of my law of assumption. I
Yeah.
assume the miracle of existence.
Yeah.
So you can become desensitized to joy, to
Oh,
at least a particular level of joy. You can
I don't know if I
get the
want
miracle.
to.
Well,
I
all I'm
love
saying.
feeling joy.
Okay, no. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm simply saying that after a while you
Yeah.
experience higher level, if for want of a better expression, a higher level of joy. So if you learn the lesson that you can appreciate reality just for its own sake, that existence is its own miracle, once you've really absorbed that into your cells are already glowing with that all the time anyway. So it's time for the next step, which is whatever it might be for you. All I'm saying is that you're never, that in this endless process of growth, you're never static. I have no idea, in an ultimate sense, the joy that, for want of a better word, God experienced. Like the ultimate experience of joy must be something that would blow every atom in your body to smithereens. Exactly. Big
Yeah.
poof. But hey, I'm not there yet. This light globe can only take so much wattage.
Yeah. Well,
It has to grow into being a better light globe to be
yeah,
able to take more energy on. Otherwise, it would just go.
yeah. Well, have you heard that thing that our bodies are becoming more crystalline? You know that because our bodies are getting absorbing more light, carrying more light, and that's part of our evolution that we're getting.
Are they? That might be part of your evolution. I
Well, I just
haven't
something I've
experienced that
heard.
myself. I know, but this is the thing. People are saying these sort of woo-woo-y, new agey stuff all the time.
But I
And
see
that's their...
but don't you see people and they glow? Like I see certain people that are, you know, they're so tuned in that they're glowing, that you can see, no?
Yeah, but my experience of people depends on me, not about them. They could be glowing at 1,000 watts, but if I'm not evolved enough to perceive their glowing, I won't see it.
Oh,
You see what I mean?
yeah.
We come back to this idea that there is no objective reality. You can be,
Okay.
you could be a radio station, you could be a radio station broadcasting the deepest truths of the universe, but unless you're tuned into that radio station, you're not going to hear it. There are radio signals around us all the time, but human ears don't hear them unless they're in a particular state of consciousness. I've been in weird states of consciousness where I've actually had radio stations playing in my head. But if I move the slightest way outside of that state of mind, that I no longer hear that radio station. But the thing,
You mean
I'm
real
getting
radio?
at,
Real radio
I
station?
believe so. It certainly sounds like it, because there's no way that that sort of gibberish and banality is part of my normal consciousness. So
Hopefully.
so I'm listening to talk. So I can be in a particular state, and I'm listening to this talkback radio going on. I'm barely aware what's going on. The words are very clear, but I know that if I move outside of that state of consciousness, I'm going to lose that signal. But what I'm getting is saying, there's enough of me still there to think, oh, what a lot of crap all of this is. No wonder I don't listen to it most of the time. But what I'm saying is that God, for want of a better word, could be broadcasting the deepest secrets of the universe constantly to us all the time. But unless our consciousness is up to tuning itself to that frequency, it's falling literally on deaf ears. And people could be glowing all around you. And in fact, I'm sure that cats see us as glowing beings, because the way that some cats look at me, you'd swear that I was lighting up like some sort of firework display. And they come to me, even though I am more or less indifferent to animals, not that I don't love them, but I don't hate them, but they'll suddenly come up. Cats that I don't even know will suddenly start putting themselves, and their owners will say they don't react to anybody else like that. And said, yeah, I guess I'm just this cat guy, right? So I don't know how they see me. Right?
Yep.
But I'm assuming that I've got, maybe I just smell like catnip. I don't know. I don't know. But it could, and there are probably higher dimensional beings floating around us all the time, wafting and being quite amused by the human circus and thinking, oh, remember when we were like that 500,000 years ago? Weren't we cute when we were spiritual children? And then another one will say, oh, yes, but look, they're trying so hard. And we know they're going to make it in the end, even if it does take another 500,000 or 1,000,000 or 1,000,000,000 years, whatever it is. And I'm sure that there are even higher dimensional beings looking at those guys and say, the people that are 500,000 years advanced of us, thinking, oh, wasn't it cute when 1,000,000,000 years ago we were like that too? And so on and so forth. And I'm sure that it's ultimately level, the Godhead is thinking, all my children, they're so cute. I love them all to pieces. I love every hydrogen atom. I love every rock I love every grain of sand on every beach, on all the beaches of all the planets of all the galaxies and all the universes. I love them all. Bring it on more stuff. Bring on the stuff all the time. I mean, I guess that's what the experience of being God is. From that's about as far as I can go. God experiencing the continual orgasm of continuous creation, which is what the Hindus think. And I think, well, if you can stand the wattage of having a continual creative orgasm, great. I personally would find it exhausting, but that's just me. Follow your bliss, baby, if you happen to be an alien butterfly falling on an alien flower on a planet 5,000 light years away.
I like that.
But follow your bliss, baby.
Alien butterfly.
So it makes me laugh. And it makes me laugh to hear these constant people that they're all saying, well, the Pleiadian consciousness has entered my mind and blah, 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 blah. Okay, fine. Okay. Tell me about that. I'm sure that's very interesting for you. But everybody's arguing as if like there's this objective reality. But there isn't. There isn't. All you're doing is you're getting off on your own self. Even God does nothing but get off on God's own self. Gee, I must be channeling some really good crap today.
Who are you channeling right now? Your higher self?
We're always channeling. This is the point. We're always creating. We're always tuned in. There is no such thing. Your internet connection is unstable. No, that's, yeah, we just cleared that. Okay. There's always the electric wire that connects the lamp that is you to the power station that is God is indestructible. It's always there. The question is, to what extent is the light bulb in charge of its own dimmer switch?
Oh wow.
Good analogy.
Did you just make that up?
Yes. Aren't I smart?
There's such a good analogy. The dimmer switch. Wow.
Exactly. And some of us have no control, and people are twiddling our switch all the time, and we're allowing ourselves to be brightened up by external circumstances or dimmed by external circumstances. And some of us go to those hands that are trying to touch our own dimmer switches and say, sorry, that's my dimmer switch, hands off. I'm going to decide when I'm down or when I'm up or anything in between. And some of us throw out the dimmer switch altogether and say, I'm glowing any way I like, whenever I like, however I like. That's not true for the majority of the human race, but everybody will get there eventually. Every hydrogen atom will ultimately become God at some point. It might take trillions of years and trillions of universes, but all consciousness gets there. But there is an endless journey anyway. We never catch up. We are forever chasing our own spiritual shadows. We will never get there. All there is more of this. But as our consciousness expands and as we grow into these selves that experience this, we embrace new experiences of reality. But there's no point in arguing that there is an objective reality. That's ridiculous. That's just ridiculous. Naughty, naughty. So generally speaking, though, in terms of the questions, any question that assumes an objective reality is a question that's based on a false premise. Any statement that makes, say, statements about conspiracies, etc., or whatever, considering the current climate, all they do is reinforce that particular pendulum. There is no way out of that rabbit hole by diving deeper into that rabbit hole. You have to basically ignore that rabbit hole altogether and concentrate on the experience that you want to experience. Yeah. Regardless of what's going on in the world. Where we come back to Vadim's rose-colored glass scenario. Right? The words are all there. I mean, Vadim isn't an idiot. I mean, I might disagree with him on quite a lot of points, but the man is not an idiot. Renee isn't an idiot. You're not an idiot. None of us.
You're not an idiot.
What? Well, except when I am. All of us, all of us have our erroneous zones, but all of us also have our zones of competence. Yeah. However, in general terms, any question that presumes an objective reality, how do I make him change? How do I make her change? How to make these circumstances change is a question that's built on a false premise.
You change
the
yourself.
Question should be is, what do I wish to experience? Frame that and then follow your inner guidance to whatever that frame is. It's not hard in principle, but you make the mistake of believing that you have to change other people. Yeah. Or even that you have to change yourself, because you're not really changing yourself. You're growing into something. You grow into. It's a bit like this. Imagine that the reality that you want to experience is behind a locked door. But the key to that locked door is you. That key has to change its shape, grow into a new shape in order to fit into that lock and unlock that reality. Without taking responsibility for what you are being and choosing to grow into that, and choosing, as I've often said, to settle for that, like settle into the growth, accept and integrate that growth into yourself, and allow yourself the time and the energy and the impulses to grow into that self until you become the self. That self, once that self becomes that key that fits that lock, the lock just opens up naturally. You don't even have to put the lock in. The lock is almost will rush to meet you. But the change has to come through you first.
Yeah.
And that's what all the techniques of a reality awakening modality is supposed to do. A RAM is supposed to awaken you to the possibility that that's even possible. And then whatever techniques out of a flurry of different tools you will use in order to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
But the core assumption is that you are not a victim of the universe. You are not subject to, you are not the feather, you are the bird.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to grow into being the bird from being a feather sometimes. You might start off being the feather blown on the winds, but you grow into becoming the whole bird. Or you awaken to your own birdness that's been there all along, because you've been so focused on thinking that you're just a feather on a wing when you are in fact the whole bird.
Right.
So every time you ask me a dumb question, and by I define dumb as a question that assumes a collective reality, I'm going to just throw that out the window and say wrong premise.
Right.
And completely contrary to everything, my understanding of what Vadim Zeland says, or that anybody that really reads these books properly. I mean, and Tufti is constantly slapping people in the face about their level of awareness. She's a bit of a sort of spiritual priestess, high heels and with a whip.
Yeah.
Sort of beating. The whole tone of that reminds me of those Zen masters. Do you know the ones where you're like in a meditation room and everybody's in a row and they're all like this, just quietly meditating, and then somebody comes along and hits you with a bamboo pole? Tufti. Slapping some sense into you, because we tried other ways and that didn't work. So
Yeah. And it's like it's so funny too. Like it's got the light. Like somehow there's something about it that's light because it's so funny. Because it's
a lot of this stuff people take so seriously.
Like,
we're all supposed to be whatever we're supposed to be. Oh God, get over yourselves.
Yeah.
It's a lot lighter than you give it credit for.
Yeah.
Having said that, there are a lot of people in really dark places, and they can't see that because they can't get there from here, because the dimmer switch is turned down so low. Were to yank it up, they would blow up.
Yeah.
So you've got to sort of adjust that dimmer switch small by small increments and give them little messages, just drip feed them. And I know because I've been where the dimmer switch was turned out really low often in my life. I'm thinking, God, why am I even here? This sucks. This really sucks.
But humor is so high vibe or whatever, and it's like everything really is so funny. Like, I mean, so many things are funny, and I think that just like even like if somebody has something that tragic that happens to them, 5 years later they tell the story with humor, right? Because now,
well, yeah. After 9/11 happened, some comedians started making jokes about it, like within a few weeks. And even there's some of the audience would laugh about it. Some of the audience would say too soon, too soon.
Right.
Because time heals all wounds, and time allows us a distance that we otherwise wouldn't have. One of my favorite expressions that I remind myself frequently of is this: life is a comedy for those who think and a tragedy for those who feel.
Oh.
If you look at the number of things that go on in the world at any time in the so-called objective reality, a lot of the stuff is absolutely horrible. Well, the book that I'm writing at the moment deals specifically with demonic possession and exorcism.
Oh.
And that's about people experiencing really, really horrible realities and how they get out of those realities. Now, it's true that there are, within the infinite alternative space, an infinite number of horrible realities that you can experience. However, there are also an infinite number of really joyful ones. There are an infinite number of hells, but there are also an infinite number of heavens. And there are an infinite number of purgatories, which are neither hell or heaven, but are just sort of bland, mediocre realities. But at least at least after you've lived in hell, even purgatory feels pretty good, because at least it's not a place of constant pain and suffering. Comedy, yes, can be a higher state of being, but it requires you to grow into that. It requires a different mindset, and a heart set and a soul set. And that's a good one. It requires a different soul set. So it's always ultimately the same technique. You start off from wherever you are, recognizing that's where you are, and you build on that.
Would you agree with the statement that heaven and hell are not places, but states of being or states of consciousness?
Absolutely. Yes, we can agree to that one. Yep, absolutely.
So your book that you're writing, is it a fiction book or is it?
No. It's nonfiction. I've actually talked to people who have been possessed and who have been through this process of exorcism or deliverance, as it's often called. And it's about the point of view not only of the people who have, not only of the exorcist himself, who is the main subject of the book, and who is writing the book, and I'm helping him along, and the experience of the people who have undergone these experiences with demonic entities and demonic evil, the forces of evil. And it's really interesting.
Yeah,
It's really compelling, because sometimes people go through very, very difficult experiences.
Yeah.
And they come out of the other end. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. They do come out stronger for it. They come out stronger in their sense of self. They come out stronger in their capacity to deal with the horrors that can be inflicted by these energies that are incompatible with normal human consciousness.
Right.
But to some extent, I tend to believe that even evil is a relative concept. Again, that's a hard thing to sell to people who are experiencing evil. There's to people who are really deep inside an evil situation, there's nothing subjective about that. But I guess a bunny rabbit can be seen as the incarnation of evil if you happen to be a carrot.
And also there's the thing about the higher self being, because everybody's higher self is in charge, right? So whatever anybody's going through, their higher self has their back, doesn't it? Or
well, yeah, and we can say that, but again, it's a tough sell. When you're in that state of being, you can maybe entertain that as a thought, but every other thing that you're experiencing is telling you that the world is meaningless, that there is nothing but torment and hell, and that the universe to get you through these entities and through these beings. It's hard to tell
but I'm
people
saying
the
that in
idea of.
regards to, I guess what I'm not saying it in regards to maybe the person who's in it, but I'm saying it to someone who's observing it, because it's like when we're observing people, like we're fine, we're okay, and then we're observing other people that are these tragic situations, and
Well, the best thing that you can do, the best thing you do when you're observing people in a bad state of mind is to stop observing them stop reinforcing that through your focused attention. You use that as a starting off point, but then you move your focus to attention of seeing them, envisaging them happy, healthy, whole, stronger, more integrated, more together, strong in whatever they are strong in, having moved on and having healed from all of that trauma. The best thing you can do for a cancer patient is to see them without cancer, see them whole. The best thing that you can do to somebody who's behaving badly is to see them not behaving badly. But if you can't do that, remove yourself from the situation. You're not helping by reinforcing their bad behavior or their bad state of being through your acknowledging that behavior or that bad state of being through your focused observation. But even then, even though that's the best that you can do, all you're actually doing is going to be changing your experience of them.
Right.
But they're multidimensional beings. So to the extent that you can maintain a focused awareness in their, if they're manifesting in your reality in a better place, at least you know that part of them is in a better place because they're in that better place with you in your reality. You see what I mean? You're not responsible for everything that happens in their reality, but at least you can you can invite them into a reality where they are showing up as a better version of themselves, because that's how you see them. And that's a pretty strong spiritual trick if you can manage that one. And it's hard because people tend to accept the reality that they're presented with.
And it starts with having the intention, because if you can't do it, you understand it and intend it and practice it, you get better and better at it, right? And
you can't do it if you have a vested interest in maintaining them being a bastard or a bitch. Do you see what I mean?
Or
if you want to hate somebody, they've got to continue showing up in a hateful way to you. You've got to abandon hating them. This is what forgiveness is about. What?
I said, and that's enjoy hating other people. But
it's another really tough sell. If somebody has continuously shown up to you as a complete bastard, a complete bitch, somebody is constantly making bad choices and ruining their own lives and the lives of everybody around them, it's hard to put on your rose-colored glasses, because the rose-colored glasses are not about denial. Okay? This is where people get mixed up. They can continue to show up that way, right? You can put on your glasses, but you're still seeing them. But what you're going to be doing is, okay, this is where you can use something like the Ho'oponopono technique. Have you heard of that one? Yes. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. Right? And what does that actually mean? It means I love you means I acknowledge that we are both spiritual beings in eternity. I'm sorry is an acknowledgement that their multidimensional self is showing up in your reality in that particular self, in that particular way. So you're apologizing to them that you are not you have not grown into a state of being where you can see the other parts of themselves that are not like that. Please forgive me as an acknowledgement that you have done that and that you require forgiveness to give for a new reality. Let's envisage you in a new way. Let us, even if you don't agree to it at a conscious level, I am now inviting you to show up in my reality in a different way, and so that facet of your multidimensional self shows up in my reality in that way, regardless of anything that else is happening with you. And maybe through that, your main focus will start focusing on the way that you're showing up in my reality and showing up in everybody else's reality like that too. All right? Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity that you are giving me, because by showing up like that to me, you are giving me the opportunity to take even more charge of my own reality experience, to grow into a version of myself where I see only the better versions of you. That's what all of that means.
Yeah. Love.
That's, you know,
It's so
they've
healing.
written people, yeah, and that's what healing is, becoming
Yeah.
whole,
Yeah.
becoming whole, recognizing the whole of another's self.
Yeah.
And the whole of another's self isn't the drug screwed up maniac who robs you or who is constantly going in and out of rehab, right? The whole person isn't the power mad person who'll crush anybody on their way to the top of their corporate ladder. The whole person isn't the almost incurable narcissist where everything is about them, right? The healing comes from recognizing that that's only one aspect of their multidimensional self. And for whatever reason, it's showing up like that in your particular reality. So you can then go through a process whereby you look at that reality and you say, you know what? I'm going to continue to, in transurfing terms, I think, frame you in a new light. I'm going to reframe my experience of you by maintaining a strong vision of you showing up to me in a way that is much more powerful and empowering and and helpful for both of us. I'll stay there, but that can only ever be an invitation. What will happen is either they will come to the party, they will step up because you maintain them in that space, or they will leave because for whatever reason they have to continue being there. But at least you will have awakened enough in your own consciousness so that they no longer show up like that in your reality, and then they'll just leave your life.
Yeah.
But you can't be involved in a psychodrama with them. You can't hate them.
Yeah.
Because you can start by hating them, but acknowledge that the hatred is merely the feeling that I hate you because I can see, because there's a that sees a better person of you, and that better part of you is incompatible with what's showing up right now. Hatred is just a symptom of alarm bell going off that this is not who they really are in their totality, in their wholeness, in their healedness. You see what I mean?
I sure do. I love.
Right? So you heal others by healing yourself, by making yourself whole.
Yeah.
And by making yourself whole, you say, I will not settle for this behavior. I will not settle for you showing up like this. I will do my best to see you, not denying that you're a complete screw up right now, but maintaining that while simultaneously seeing you as a different being. But if I hate you, then if I'm committing to hate you, I have to commit to keeping my experience of you in that state so that I can continue to hate you.
Yeah.
See how? And then, so any question that assumes that you can change another person is again based on a false premise. You cannot change another person. There is no morality problem here.
Yeah.
Right? There's no question of, oh, do I have the right to change them? Do I have the right? You don't have the power. Forget the right. You won't have the power to do that. All you're going to be able to do is change the experience of them in your particular reality.
Yeah.
And that you are perfectly entitled and free to do.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it will not work for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
And the failing might be in you. Because no matter how much you are envisaging them, there's something within you that wants to maintain your experience of them in that state for whatever reason. And sometimes it won't work because no matter how much you're leaving open the invitation, they will not walk through the door to a better version of themselves, at least in your reality.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I hope that people who have asked that question about changing other people have, get the opportunity to hear your response to that, because that's
If they don't, it's because I'm not meant to give them that message. They will hear that from someone else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? All I'm doing at the moment, the only reason not the only reason, but the majority of the reason why I'm spending time with you here now is that I'm trying to kill as many birds with one stone.
Yes.
Right? I'm just simply saying, here's a viewpoint. Here's something that you can do. It might or might not work, but give it a shot. What do you got to lose except a bit of time and energy? But it's certainly better. But if it works, it's certainly a good investment of your time and energy.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work, well, do something else. Hear the message in another way from somebody else. I can only speak what I think is true. Whether you hear what I'm saying
Yeah.
is entirely.
Yeah.
I have no investment in whether or not you are in a consciousness state to receive the message in the way that I'm delivering it.
Yeah. I want to thank you so much for your time and your wisdom. It's always it's actually fun being with you because you are so much fun. What's that?
Oh, thanks. Yeah. No, I'm just channeling myself.
Oh, you're channeling yourself?
Yes.
You're how many books have you written?
It depends on what you call writing. There are about 20. There are over 20 books with my name on it. But there are quite a lot that don't have my name on it. That I've had quite a lot of, that I've either written as a ghostwriter or that I've had such a lot of input in editorially that I might as well have written them.
Yeah.
But they're co-creations.
Right.
No author, regardless of what you might think, creates in a vacuum. It's never entirely my work. We always end up working with editors, and we always end up working with collaborators in some form. Even the publisher is a collaborator, and that's possibly for the good, because I can name numerous examples of authors that started off really well because they embraced those collaborative processes, but then they either got too rich or too powerful or too successful, and it became all about, well, me, I want to say this way, and then the quality of their work suffers.
Yeah.
I'd say, yeah, maybe about 50 books that I have had a lot of involvement in, even if my name isn't on them. And then beyond that, there's probably another 50 that I've worked on as an editor.
Right.
Cleaning it up, giving it a haircut, demanding more from a writer.
Right.
Because there's that as well. And I've mentored a lot of people as well. People who come to me because they want to improve their capacity to create narratives. And I think it's a great skill. It's a great reality creation skill to start off by learning how to write properly, because it clarifies your thinking. It forces you to make creative choices all the time that are about not only what you want to say, but what you want somebody else to experience. If you can get very good at constructing experiences for other people, you begin to get very good at constructing experiences for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. Well, thank you so much. This was great.
You're welcome.
And hopefully we'll get
Thank
to talk to you time.
Okay. Whenever, whatever.
Whenever,
I'm easy.
Okay. Thanks again. See you later.
Ciao.
Okay.